Red sky at night, sailors delight. Red sky at morning, sailors take warning. I woke up to an extremely sinister, blood red sunrise and sky this morning. I'd been up already in the darkness, and I'd already seen this article about the ghost ship. And then as the sun started coming up, the sky just turned blood red. And I thought about that phrase, red sky at night. My father used to say it a lot growing up. You know, on the farm, we wake up really early, take care of the horses before school, and then we'd be up fairly late doing all the horse chores. This is obviously, these home videos are very horse themed, but I'm tapping into my childhood while I'm thinking about some of these stories. And the red sky at night thing, we heard all the time. And I was curious about its history. So I have this pulled up for you. The common phrase, red sky at morning, is a line from an ancient rhyme often repeated with variants by mariners and others. Red sky at night, sailors delight. Red sky at morning, sailors take warning. The concept is over 2,000 years old and is cited in the New Testament as established wisdom, and mentioned in Matthew 16:2-3. Which we'll get to that in a second. The rhyme is a rule of thumb used for weather forecasting during the past 2 millennia. It is based on the reddish glow of the morning or evening sky caused by trapped particles scattering the blue light from the sun in a stable air mass. So says the science, and we all trust the science, don't we? In the morning, skies are of an orange red glow. It signifies a high-pressure air mass with stable air-trapping particles like dust, which scatters the sun's blue light. This high pressure is moving towards the east, and a low-pressure system moves in from the west. Conversely, in order to see the red sky in the evening, high-pressure air mass from the west scatters the blue light in the atmospheric particles, leaving the orange-red glow. High-pressure air mass signifies stable weather, while low pressure signifies unstable weather. I love that people just kind of knew this intuitively before they had the modern science to make sense of it. But let's go to Matthew really quick. And the translation from the Greek is, and this is from the RSV, not one I typically read, but this is the first one I pulled up. Translation-wise, make sure I'm still recording here. When it is evening, you say it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, it will be stormy today, for the sky is red and threatening. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times. So a little context there in Matthew 16:2-3. It's a passage within the second and third verses in the 16th chapter of the Gospel of Matthew in the New Testament. It describes a confrontation between Jesus and the Pharisees over their demand for a sign from heaven. It is one of several passages of the New Testament that are absent from many early manuscripts. The authenticity of the passage has been disputed by scholars since the second half of the 19th century. Oh, scholars, always looking to just disrupt everything that is good. In the Wikipedia for Matthew 16:2-3 is this really interesting illustration from 1919. It's called Astronomy and the Bible by Lucas Albert Reed. And I thought I'd pull this up because this illustration from 1919, it's about as good as the images, I'm putting in quotes for those who are just listening, that we get from NASA today. But it's a cool illustration. We see my Ring camera, my Ring light in the background as I try to make the Doomsday Bunker bright enough for me to broadcast to you guys. But it's a cool painting and way cooler than what NASA's trying to do these days with their pixelated depictions of fake space. Which brings us to the ghost ship. So this just happened yesterday in Washington. And this is from fox8.com. Eerie video of a ghost boat drifting into ferry terminal. How did a crewless boat without lights get loose from its moorings? So many questions remain after a 100-foot vessel described as a ghost boat was spotted gliding through the here we go again, Mukilteo, guys let me know, ferry terminal on December 11th in a video posted by Washington State Ferries. Thank you guys for those who reached out yesterday with my mispronunciations. I am now working on those, and I look forward to hearing from you tomorrow morning about that one from our friends in Washington. In the wild video, a passenger ferry was seen shining spotlights over the eerie site, attempting to avoid the unmanned vessel. Now, this is like this real lo-fi podcast we're doing here from my doomsday bunker, but there you go. It is a pretty cool image, despite the ads in the background. Also, do you notice the guy on the boat? I don't think I can make it any bigger. You notice him right there? It's funny. Situations like this are not just unusual, they're dangerous. An unlit vessel can cause serious hazards on the water and put other boats and people at risk, Washington State Ferries wrote in the Post. They explained that's why navigational lights are so important on public ferries, saying their ferry had to approach the dock very carefully until the drifting vessel moved out of the way. No damage was reported in the incident, and the ghost boat was reportedly towed back to safety. Kudos to our employees for the training and professionalism they bring every day to help keep our customers safe, wrote the Washington State Ferries. So that's all there is. There's a lot of local articles about it, but I love stories like that. And I brought up other articles from other ghost ship stories here I want to go through. But before I do that, this story made me think of a story a friend told me a while ago. Not so much a ghost ship, but things that happened on what could be a haunted ship. And I'm going to pull it up really quick if my computer will allow me before it explodes. Let's see here. It's about the Queen Mary. You guys know about the Queen Mary? So, according to Wikipedia, the RMS Queen Mary is a historical retired British ocean liner that operated primarily on the North Atlantic Ocean from 1936 to 1967 for the Cunard Line. It is currently a hotel, museum, and convention space in Long Beach, California. It is on the U.S. National Register of Historic Places and member of Historic Hotels of America, the official program of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Built by John Brown and Company in Clydebank, Scotland, she was subsequently joined by the RMS Queen Elizabeth in Cunard's two-ship weekly express service between Southampton and New York. These queens were the British response to the express superliners built by German, Italian, and French companies in the late 1920s and the early 1930s. Queen Mary sailed on her maiden voyage on May 27, 1936, and won the Blue Riband that August. She lost the title to SS Normandy in 1937 and recaptured it in 1938, holding it until 1952 when the new SS United States claimed it. With the outbreak of World War II, she was converted into a troop ship and ferried Allied soldiers during the conflict. On one voyage in 1943, she carried over 16,000 people, still the record for the most people on one vessel at the same time. She was, as they say in the ship world, laid down on December 1st, 1930. Laid down. The Queen was laid down on December 1st, 1930. That's why I get to, if there's any spooky stories here on the Wikipedia page before I talk about my friend and the tattoos they used to do on the Queen Mary. I'll just say this, and for World War II in late August 1939, Queen Mary was on a return run from New York to Southampton. The international situation led to her being escorted by the battlecruiser HMS Hood. She arrived safely and set out again for New York on September 1st. By the time she arrived, war had been declared and she was ordered to remain in port alongside Normandy until further notice. So that's interesting history. It's a beautiful ship. If you want to look it up, I strongly recommend it. And so they turned it into this hotel and they do a lot of different conventions there. Just see if they have any ghost stories on the Wikipedia page. I don't think they do. They should. There should be a whole thing about it. Well, I'll look those up while I tell this. So my friend, an old friend of mine, Hunter Spanks, a great tattooer. I can't type and talk at the same time because my mom took a lot of Tylenol when she was pregnant with me. So Hunter, great tattooer, and I have a few tattoos from him back from my days of managing a tattoo shop. Yeah, actually gave me one that has a quote on it from the band At the Drive-In. I write to remember, from the song One Hour Scissor. And while he was tattooing that on me, it was back in the day when I was freelancing, writing for different publications. And I was at the time doing this series of articles, interviews, where I would interview a tattooer while they tattooed me. It would be all audio, all written, not audio, because the sound of the machine would not be so conducive to anything anyone would want to listen to. But it was a long tattoo session, and it was great. We talked about a lot of things. I'll tell you about two of those things. The first was that they had a tattoo like convention out there, and this is way before I was really into the idea of or believing in demons and stuff like that. So now in retrospect, it's even crazier to me. But they were convinced this thing was haunted and that they could do they could conjure ghosts by doing tattoos in the dark rooms of the RMS Queen Mary with no ink. Very bizarre story. They thought they could bring about the ghosts. I don't think they ever saw anything, but I think about it all the time when I hear about ghost ships or the Queen Mary comes up in conversation as it does, I'm sure, for everybody in just a small talk in day-to-day life. But just love the image of a bunch of wild tattooers in a dark room tattooing, thinking that they could conjure some sort of ghost. I don't recommend that. I am not into that idea now, but back when I first heard it, I thought that was a pretty funny story. Hunter also, in that same tattoo session, asked me about God, and this might be 20 years ago. And I remember at that point, I consider myself an atheist, and I kind of laughed off the idea, and I thought he would have too. And he really gave me this really awesome talk about how why the existence of God is the evidence of God is everywhere, and that it takes humility to find yourself humble before the Lord, and not think of yourself as detached from God, and actually or to mock it, which maybe I did a little bit back then. I know I've talked about it in my younger years, but at that point I was probably just laughing it off, being like, it's a silly, myth, silly fairy tale. And I'll always appreciate him taking the time to talk me through, and I don't know what he considers himself. We didn't really get into theology so much as we talked about the existence of God, and how I should maybe reconsider my position on it. And I would say that was probably one of the earlier steps I took towards having faith. I was dating my now wife at the time, and so I'd already had her, she was raised a Christian, always a Christian, and thank God she was very patient with me throughout that time. So I had her as well, and talking to her throughout all those years, when I was very stubborn, and then hearing from Hunter about it, I always appreciate that, and people being very honest with me about their perception of existence and of faith, and I'll never forget it. Yeah, I was thinking of the ghost ship, and let's get into some spooky stories with the ghost ships. Let's see here. So on the Queen RMS, on the Queen Mary, they have little Jackie, a young girl believed to have drowned in the first class pool, whose laughter and splashing are still heard. John Pedler, an 18-year-old crew member crushed by a watertight door in the engine room. His spirit is seen near the site. We have W.E. Stark, a senior official who died after drinking cleaning fluid, mistakenly thinking it was gin. Cabinet doors slamming are attributed to him. The Lady in Red. What haunted ship? What would be a haunted ship without a Lady in Red ghost? A mysterious woman seen in the third-class lounge, often described by cleaning staff before she vanishes. And the stateroom B340, known as the most haunted room, with reports of apparitions, strange noises, and physical interactions. I could be wrong, but I feel like that might be the room where the tattooers were doing this stuff. I feel like that's a part of the story, but again, it's been 20 years, so I'm not fully sure. But there are, I had another link pulled up, but it's disappeared, unfortunately, because my computer just eats links of ghost ship stories. So I'll get back to that in a second while I bring up this. Thinking of all of that, thinking of ships, thinking of mysteries, I couldn't help but think of my beloved Hudson River, where I grew up in New York. For those who don't know, the Hudson River starts in the lake tier of the clouds. It's like a lake on top of a mountain, way upstate New York. And there are portions of the Hudson River in upstate New York where you could just jump right across. And then it comes down to where I grew up in the lower Hudson Valley, where it's enormous. And giant ships and tugboats go up and down, floating below the Hudson, the Bear Mountain Bridge, and I forget the name of the Newburgh Beacon Bridge, and the Highland Bridge. I forget. It's been a while since I've been up that far, but Henry Hudson was, I believe they named the river after him. And Henry Hudson, if you don't know, was an English sea explorer and navigator during the early 17th century, best known for his explorations of present-day Canada and parts of the northeastern United States. In 1607 and 1608, Hudson made 2 attempts on behalf of English merchants to find a rumored northeast passage to Cathay via a route above the Arctic Circle. In 1609, he landed in North America on behalf of the Dutch East India Company and explored the region around the modern New York metropolitan area. Looking for a northwest passage to Asia on his ship Half Moon, Half Moon is what that means, he sailed up the Hudson River, which was later named after him, and thereby laid the foundation for Dutch colonization of the region, which is why we have a lot of places named like Fishkill, Peekskill, stuff like that. The kill is Dutch, I believe. I believe that means like water or fish. His contributions to the exploration of the New World were significant and lasting. His voyages helped to establish European contact with the native peoples of North America and contributed to the development of trade and commerce. On his final expedition, while still searching for the Northwest Passage, Hudson became the first European to see the Hudson Strait and the immense Hudson Bay. In 1611, after wintering on the shore of James Bay, Hudson wanted to press on to the west, but most of his crew mutinied. The mutineers cast Hudson, his son, and 6 others adrift, and then happened to the Hudsons. And then what then happened to the Hudsons and their companions is unknown. So this article pulling up a little more of that. Let me see. Here we go. This is from the Smithsonian Associates. So that's a story a lot of us knew growing up along the river. Where I grew up in Highland Falls, right next to West Point, where the military academy is, where they were probably experimenting on me from a very young age and all of my friends. That might be why I have this weird misshapen forehead. But it also could be because of the landfill. However, the landfill was created by West Point. So that one day I'll figure out that mystery. The mystery of my forehead. But being on the river, we hear that a lot. And like I've said before, there's so many crazy historical moments in that history, in that river, in that specific portion of the river, because that's where there's a kind of narrower bend in the river where West Point is across the river from Garrison, New York. And so that's why George Washington won to West Point. Great overlook for British warships. And they decided back then, in the early days of military engineering, before West Point was established as an academy for engineers, they designed that giant chain. That was a crazy sound. I don't know if that was my rooster. That was a person. But they took the chain and stretched it across the river. And they thought that was stop. That is my rooster. My rooster's hungry. It sounded like a ghoul of sorts, or a banshee. I should bring him in here and interview him. So the chain they dragged across the river, and they actually had these like floating pallets that the chain would kind of rest on as they brought it across the river. It was a big to do, and they would bring it back and forth a lot because this part of the river, since it's narrower, would freeze a whole bunch. I don't believe it was ever actually tested on a warship because I don't think they actually made it that far. They were north and they were south of it because another story would be Benedict Arnold, who was put in charge of West Point during the war. You know, he was a decorated war hero, got wounded in a battle, I believe in, I want to say Syracuse, New York, somewhere upstate. My rooster wants to add some commentary. And they didn't know Benedict was a turncoat, and Benedict allowed West Point to kind of fall into disrepair because his plan was to hand it over to the British. And so Garrison being right across the river, he lived in Garrison with his wife directly across the river beneath a Sugarloaf Mountain. And on top of Sugarloaf Mountain is a castle, the Osborne Castle, where it was rumored that it was the inspiration behind the witch's castle in The Wizard of Oz. A lot of locals think it was actually filmed there. I don't think that's true. But the reason why it might be an inspiration to it is because just south of that now, on that side of the river, is Peekskill, where they say L. Frank Baum, he lived there for a while, and there was a yellow brick road that they say inspired that part of the book too. So it's possible. And that's well documented about him being there and the yellow brick road, which is now gone. They've torn it apart. But a lot of good history right there. And then we have Mr. Hudson himself with this tragic ending. Perhaps, and this is from the Smithsonian Associates, perhaps the greatest mystery in the history of Arctic exploration is the fate of Henry Hudson. Though the British navigator failed to find a northwest passage from Europe to Asia, his several voyages in search of that goal laid the groundwork for the Dutch colonization of the Hudson River region, as well as English land claims in Canada. His final expedition, begun in April 1610, sought a more southerly path to Asia, a supposed water passage across North America. Instead, Hudson's ship Discovery spent months drifting through the lower reaches of the vast Canadian Bay that would later bear his name. While enduring harsh winter conditions with no outlet in the Pacific in sight, to the Pacific in sight, some crew members grew restless and hostile, suspecting Hudson of hoarding rations to give to his favorite crew members. That's not very nice, is it? In June 1611, as the expedition began its return to England, sailors Henry Green and Robert Juet led a mutiny. Seizing Hudson and his son, they cast them adrift on what is now James Bay in a small open lifeboat, along with seven other men who were suffering from scurvy. It's funny because it's just so ridiculous. They're like, all right, you guys are sick, you're with him. Later, Hudson was never heard from again. Over the centuries, tales have come down to the inhabitants of the James Bay area telling of fair-skinned strangers on their shores. Could they have been the abandoned master and his crew? Author and Arctic explorer Lawrence Millman examines the mystery of Henry Hudson's disappearance and offers a possible explanation based on stories he collected from Cree elders, that's C-R-E-E, in the James Bay villages in the 1990s. So that's from a book, The Uncharted Territory, Great Expeditions and the Trailblazers Who Led Them. It's fascinating. I've always been fascinated by historical ship mutinies. So I'm going to go through just real quick some of these spooky ghost ship stories while we round out this portion of the show. And thank you guys for joining me. It has been good to be back despite not being in the official studio. It means a lot that you guys are still showing up and hanging out. We're having fun. I was going to put my mug on the old table. Wish you could see this table. It looks like it's from a ship because everything we own is old except for this thing. And this is an old print from Muro. I always like this. Anyway, the spookiest ghost ship stories from around the world. This is from Boat International. We have the Octavius. Although the Earth's warming temperatures mean that the Northwest Passage is now free to sail through, this was not always the case. So we have the three-masted schooner departed from England in 1761, but was found off the coast of Greenland in 1775. Her captain had unluckily decided to try and use the then non-existent Northwest Passage, which the super yacht Rosehearty has since cleared to return home. The 5 men who boarded the derelict ship in 1775 were confronted with a ghostly sight. The entire 28-man crew was below deck, frozen to death. The icy figure of the ship's captain was discovered sitting at his desk, writing in his logbook, pen still in hand. The last logbook entry was in 1762. The ghost ship and her crew have been lost at sea for 13 years. We have the SS Orang Medan. They say it's shrouded in mystery. The legend goes that in 1947, a cargo ship off the coast of Indonesia put out a distress call with the words, "All officers, including captain, are dead, lying in chart room and bridge. Possibly whole crew dead." Before help could arrive, a second message was radioed in with just 2 words, "I die." Rescue workers who boarded the ship discovered to their horror that the crew members were indeed deceased, with their bodies contorted and arms outstretched as if fending off an attacker. But without any signs of injury, an engine room fire then caused the ship to be abandoned and eventually sunk, taking its ghastly secret and any evidence of an autopsy investigation to Davy Jones' locker. Later reports contradicted the supernatural tale, however, with a 1948 newspaper article citing a survivor who blamed the deaths on a leak of its deadly cargo, which was sulfuric acid. What's more, there is no record of the SS Orang Medan in Lloyd's registry, leading some to conclude that this ghost story is pure fabrication. Guess we'll never know. The Mary Celeste. No ghost ship compendium would be complete without the tale of the brigantine Mary Celeste. Her fate has passed into maritime myth thanks in large part to a short story by Dr. Arthur Conan Doyle, of course, the writer of Sherlock Holmes. What we do know is that the Mary Celeste had sailed from New York on November 7th, 1872, bound for Genoa with a cargo of alcohol. Almost a month later, on the afternoon of December 5th, she was spotted drifting somewhere between the Azores and Portugal, another brigantine on an Atlantic, passing by another brigantine on an Atlantic crossing. Captain Morehouse knew Captain Briggs of the Mary Celeste to be a capable sailor and was suspicious. He ordered, this is the captain from the other boat who saw the ship, he ordered a boarding party to the Mary Celeste, and his crew found a deserted ship in seaworthy condition. Captain Morehouse split his crew and sailed the Mary Celeste to Gibraltar. To this date, the fate of Captain Briggs, his wife, child, and crew of 7 remains unsolved. Whether Briggs abandoned ship because of bad weather or whether there is a more sinister reason for their disappearance will never be known. All right. I want to move on. There's a bunch of other ones. I'm like the Flying Dutchman. A lot of you guys know that one. But if you want to look that up, that's from the Boat International. So I have some other things I want to talk about. But before, I also want to say that thinking about books, if you're interested in reading a novel, that's kind of like what we were talking about here. This is something I read when it came out. This came out in 2016. I read it around this time of the year, so it was cold, which might be good for you guys if you want to read a novel or listen to it. I actually listened to it. It's really well read, the Audible version, but it's called The North Water by Ian McGuire. And it's one of my favorite books. And this is just a little summary of it. The North Water is a brutal historical thriller by Ian McGuire about a disgraced ex-Army surgeon, Patrick Sumner, who joins a 19th century whaling voyage to the Arctic to escape his past, only to find himself on a ship with a psychopathic harpooner, Henry Drax, leading to a violent confrontation in the frozen wilderness. The novel was praised for its gritty realism and dark wit. It explores themes of humanity, survival, and evil under extreme conditions. I guess it was adapted into a miniseries by Colin Farrell. Haven't seen it. That's my first actually hearing about that. But it's a really good book. It is not for the faint of heart. It opens up, I think it might be the first scene or two, with some pretty gross material. But it just helps you understand that we're about to deal with some major evil, and our protagonist is about to come up against that evil. in a really wild setting of like an old ship, 19th century ship, in the North Water in the Arctic. If you haven't gone down the rabbit hole of looking at ships from today going through the Arctic Sea, highly recommend it. Something I do from time to time. You might find it interesting. It is crazy what those guys go through on those waters. Really, really interesting stuff. And then, okay, I swear, there's one last thing before we move on from the ships for show and tell. I'm not gonna do this all the time, but I thought you'd be interested in this. This is from my time at the auction gallery. You guys know what this is? It's obviously a candlestick holder, and it's a little broken now, so I need to tighten it up. But this is a gimbal from an old ship, so when you're in rough waters, the candle would not fall, you see? So I've always loved this. I have a few of these. There we go. This one's a little messed up, but this is just one of those little knickknacks I always thought was cool. Obviously don't use it much, but neat little candlestick. If you're ever on a old ship trying to get through the Arctic seas, but they're cool. The gimbal candle holder, I just pulled this up real quick to make sure I was right. Gimbal candle holders were used on ships to keep candles upright and stable despite the violent rocking and pitching of the vessel, preventing both fire hazards and the candle from going out. The pivoting weighted design allows the candle holder to remain level, providing consistent light for navigation and daily tasks in rough seas. A crucial safety feature given fire was a major danger on wooden ships. It also might remind you of like Scrooge, walking through his house at night before getting confronted by a ghost, which is a great Christmas story, but also a phenomenal ghost story. All right. What do we have next here? Oh yeah, real quick. In speaking of, look, I took notes, guys. I took notes today. And to make sure we're still recording. In thinking of the place where I got this, the auction gallery I used to work at, I was there for a decade. Can't help but think of the first time I ever saw a vampire killing kit. Obviously, I'm thinking about this because the rumors that are circulating about me being a vampire. But I remember seeing my first vampire killing kit at the auction gallery, and it was like a big deal. People really collect these things, and there's a lot of different versions. Now, the funny thing is, we'd go through, after collecting these things out in the world, we then would stage them, and my other job outside of just moving them and putting them in a box truck would be setting up a showroom and taking pictures of it for the website for the people who would bid online, but also for people who come in person to walk around the room and check the stuff out. And then I'd be like the guy behind the showcase who would be like sitting there, and some person would be able to kind of see the vampire kit, and I'd bring it out and let them see it. A lot of them would pretend to be from the 18th or 19th century. I think a lot of those are fake. There are some that look like they're old, like this one I found. This is not like the one I saw was very different. I tried looking up a picture of it, but the website for the auction gallery I work for is gone. But that's like this one is saying it's old. It looks old, but what I'm seeing is that most of them were made in the early 2000s. But this one is saying it is a rare, primitive, antique vampire killing kit. And they all kind of have the same stuff in them. Holy water, a Bible, crucifix, a little stabby action. So the vampire kit I was looking for, which they were trying to pass off as 19th century, but we couldn't say that because it wasn't true. We would say 19th century style. It had a crucifix in it made of ivory. It was ivory, and it doubled as a pistol with there was bullets you could put in it. So you could rack the cross, the crucifix, ridiculous, and kill your vampire with it. I just thought that was funny. And the auction gallery was such an interesting place to spend. I once met Death there. And by Death, I mean the actor William Sadler, who lived in the area. And his wife passed away about a year ago. And I met her. And very nice. But he would come by all the time. So this is William Sadler, if you don't know, is literally Death from Bill and Ted. That's how I know him. But he's been in a million things. Great character actor. And, I knew early on in my job there that we were kind of dealing in the world of death because of all the things we'd have to see and the people grieving and objects from dead people. thinking about like how they would bury mummies with all their possessions. It just felt like that a lot of the time. So there was this culture of death that surrounds an auction gallery, because we kind of felt like a funeral home, but one that sold things. It was like a funeral home meets a flea market. And so death was just a very large part of that job. And one day, as I'm sitting behind the glass showcase, surrounded by the art that I hung on the walls that was for sale, and all the little knickknacks and furniture, stuff like this, like this is, I didn't get this from the auction gallery, but this is not the most comfortable thing to sit in, but this is all we have. I do have this little thing over here that looks a little more comfortable, but there's no back to it. And if you don't know, this is, they used to have to boil the wood to make it soft enough to curve like that. I believe these are from like Ohio in the late 19th century. So this is somehow less comfortable than the chair I have in the studio, which is around the same age, but we did these chairs. Anyway, the auction gallery is filled with stuff like that, and in walks William Sadler, and I immediately am like, that's death. This is like around the beginning of him showing up to the auction gallery to buy things, and he would sit in the audience during the actual auction, and he would do doodles of everything, and he would leave them. I never got one. The auctioneer got one, but and some other employees got them. I never got one, but he would doodle things. It was really cool. And Death just walked in that one day, and he wanted to see the painting I had behind me, which was this really large oil painting, really large, like 3 times the size of this. And take it down carefully. Well, no, before I take it down, I have to get a ladder to get up there. It is really high up. And I just remember him looking at me and seeing how rickety the ladder was, because like everything we have and everything the auction gallery had was old. And this thing is like shaky. And he comes around the showcase, holds the ladder for me, looks up at me, and with like the slightest smile goes, "Wouldn't want you to die." And I was just like looking down at him like, that's death. Really nice guy. And I remember his wife looked at a scarab. We had this ancient scarab from, not ancient, but like it was probably 200 years old, from Britain. And his wife was interested. It was this beautiful scarab, like a brooch or something. So funny. But Death was cool. He was a cool guy, really nice. And he wore fingerless gloves and a hoodie. And if you don't know who William Sadler is, I highly recommend looking into William Sadler. He is in so many great shows and movies, but Bill and Ted's one of my favorites. So in other news, we have a UFO sightings, and this just came out 2 days ago from Vista Today. Chester County town listed among most UFO sightings in Pennsylvania. We'll move a little closer here. You can hear these chairs sound like an old ship. Trying not to move too much. Okay. So this is shout out to our friends in Pennsylvania. In Westchester, it has been reported one of the most cities with the most UFO sightings, in Pennsylvania, according to a report by Stacker. The first official UFO sighting was in 1947, an event that set off a cultural craze across the United States and an obsession that is just as prevalent today. Why does every website want me to take an IQ test? What are you trying to tell me? And the other ad is for a college, which I'm definitely not going to. Pilot Kenneth Arnold had taken off from the Chehalis, Washington. All right, guys, another Washington mispronunciation probably hit me up, to look for a lost military aircraft that had crashed. However, he found something quite different instead. While he flew around Mount Rainier, Arnold reported that he encountered 9 wingless objects speeding through the air faster than any airplane could. He spent years trying to explain the phenomenon, creating the term flying saucer. A little backstory for you for UFOs. Americans have since fixated on the idea, with a number of UFO sightings being recorded each year. In 2021, 41% of Americans believe these sightings were the work of aliens. I should remind you guys that paranormal encounters and UFO sightings spiked during lockdowns. Who knows if they were legitimate sightings and encounters, but my take is that people had more time on their hands and were more isolated. There was a lot of fear amongst people, and the skies were clear. They could see the tops of the Himalayan mountains for the first time in years. So, who knows why that is, but that was a thing. The idea has persisted in popularity due to both government hearings and pop culture, most notably the variety of science fiction movies, including The Day the Earth Stood Still and Invasion of the Body Snatchers. 2 amazing movies. Amazing. I love the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but the remake's good too. The U.S. government has only amplified these theories, releasing UFO sighting videos from military officials, causing many Americans to grow more and more paranoid about national security, which might be part of the reason they're doing it. Overall, Westchester, Pennsylvania lands at number 10 with 39 sightings since 1995. To see the complete list of cities, I'm going to pull this up. My computer will allow it. But if you guys are listening from my rooster escape, if you guys are listening from Pennsylvania, let me know in the comments if you've experienced sightings there. I know we've had some phone calls from there in Ohio. I opened the link and it just brings me back to the story. Well, there's that. Okay. In other UFO news, sort of. This was from the 13th of this month. Fire near Roswell's Hangar 84 sparks fresh UFO conspiracy theories over 1947 alien crash claims. Now let me try to pull up this picture for you guys in this lo-fi podcast session we're doing here. This is a picture. This is the whole picture, unless it gets bigger. No, but here's a picture, a portion of the fire. Big fire. Looks like flashbacks to George Floyd riots. Oh wait, there is more here. Sorry. My computer was taking forever to load. Look at this. Podcasting in 2025. A large fire broke out near the controversial Hangar 84 at the Roswell Air Center in New Mexico. It reportedly occurred in the evening and the local firefighter contained it. No injuries were reported and the cause of the fire remains unknown. The site is long linked to the infamous 1947 UFO crash. There have been long arguments, whistleblower reports about alien bodies and debris from the crash that they were said to be stashed there. So many ads on this article. Holy moly. It's not even loading. I'm going to pull up this other article, see if there's anything else here. The city of Roswell set a fire at a building at the Roswell Air Center, left the building and its contents a total loss. A passerby reported the fire just before 8 p.m. on Thursday. So this was the end of last week. It spread from the roof to the whole building, which was leased by Aersale, Aersale. There were no employees in the building at the time of the fire. There were no injuries. The fire was declared under control at 9:45 p.m. American airline flights were not affected. I don't know why. Oh, I guess because it's at the Air Center. Okay. I'm like, okay. The cause of the fire is under investigation by the Roswell Fire Department Fire Marshal's Office, the New Mexico State Fire Marshal's Office, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, everyone's favorite ATF. According to the city, the cause of explosions that were heard during the fire was propane tanks that had been reached by the fire and the effects of fire and water on metals that were inside the building. Okay, I'll stop there. Just to recap some of today's stories, some of this year's stories. We had that fire. It's mysterious. Who knows the answers? But we also had this year the Gothic fire, which started on July 4th. The official story is that a lightning bolt hit the desert and started a fire. And is it Candy who calls in from over there? No, maybe you're from Vegas. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name now of the awesome person who calls in from near Roswell. My apologies, but I believe you said that there is a lot of like brush that is across the desert. Because I was thinking like, how does a desert catch fire like that? But there's a lot of brush, and the fire raged on. It was like a 39,000 acre big fire. So there was that, but there were obviously theories coming out of that, like why is all this area surrounding Area 51 on fire? That was interesting because Earlier this year, there was reports from the invisible enemy, as they call it, from people who worked out there in the 90s who claimed to have a disease they call the invisible enemy that came from top secret projects that they worked on while there. I believe they say a few hundred, maybe 200 people, they say have died as a result of this invisible enemy. And that a lot of these guys who are alive have experienced very similar tumors, some of them grapefruit-sized tumors. It's really sad. The one guy has told reporters that he believes his DNA has been altered by this, and that it actually affected his child, that it affected his wife with the baby in utero, and that his baby was born with a brain tumor that he attributes to the invisible enemy. On top of all that, we also have that mysterious crash that happened like a month or two ago out there. That was weird. I mentioned it yesterday. They don't know exactly what it was. It could just be drones. A drone fell. It's one of our things, and that was it. Or it's interdimensional beings. It's aliens. Who knows? So that is what I got for you guys today. But I do have some things I wanted to show you in the meantime. So I've been having fun doing show and tell. So maybe some of you tune out at this portion. We did the gimbal. There's that. We did the chair. So in reference to yesterday, I thought it'd be funny to show you guys this comically big horseshoe. This is not from a real horse, though it's not too much bigger than what you might see on a Clydesdale, or maybe a Bergeron, I believe is a big horse. But this thing is hilarious to me. A blacksmith made this for my son. It's heavy. It's heavy. But imagine this thing, 4 of these on a road by the JFK airport, just trotting on by, and getting kicked by one of these is not fun. Despite this being bigger than usual, because typically they're probably more like, it would fit inside of this. Let's see if that's something to compare it to. I don't. But I'm a horseshoe up kind of guy. Not that I really believe. I'm not superstitious, but growing up on a farm, we were like, a horseshoe is up for good luck. This is a debate within the horse community that because it would catch the luck. Other people believe you let it like this because you let all the luck flow out. I've always subscribed to that. Not that I'm in that mindset anymore of superstitious things like that, but that's that. And now I just thinking of my grandfather a lot. I want to show you more of that. He had some wild stories. So if your grandparents are still alive, or your parents are elderly, or if they're not elderly, just if you still have people who are older than you in your family, or if you know anyone, doesn't have to be in your family that are older, I highly recommend going and talking to them about their life, and maybe ask them about where they were for certain historical moments to get context. I realized when I was probably 20, the first person I did this with officially was my dad's mom, my grandma, who lived to be like 96. And I remember hearing some of her crazy stories from the city, and be like, I have to record these and put them on tape, just to know where they're from, and like kind of like understand my lineage and what they went through and stuff like that. So I remember recording a bunch of stories with her, really interesting stories, nothing like too crazy, just interesting things you go through, in the early 1900s in the city. Her father, when they came over from Ireland, he started a laundromat, and they were really busy. So that was like their thing. And then, she would marry a guy who worked in the city. I forget his other job, but he's the guy who then also became a judge for harness racing. And they had 10 kids. One did not make it very much after birth, long after birth. And so I remember talking to her and just recording everything and getting her whole story. And, and then getting not just her story, but then she had memory of people from like the late 1800s. So I need to know that kind of stuff. I'm very interested in that. And then looking at where they are, kind of like making landmarks in my ancestry of like, okay, my grandma was here for JFK assassination. She was here for the Great Depression. How did that affect her? How did that affect our business? What does she remember? A ton of things like that. So then I was much closer with my grandparents on my mom's side, just because like they visited more, and he had he was like a hero to me, my grandfather and my grandma. So this is a picture of him. Don't mind my dirty fingernails. I've been working in the yard, but that's him and his brother on those Indians. Yeah, the names are on the back. But look at, they're so rad. Like these dudes were just rad. So this is in the 40s. Look at the boots. And these are tall guys. Like we're all pretty tall. I'm 6'2". I believe his brother, right, this guy was like 6'4". My grandfather was 6'2". And they used to rip around Brooklyn, New York, and these bikes. But then he became a cop, and this was him as a cop. That's him with the bike as well. But that's him as a cop. Looks, I mean, that is a classic cop right there. Sick lamp though. Sick map, sick desk. Look at that tie. This is a little bit after he was undercover in the Bronx, and around the time that he helped apprehend, oh man, I'm forgetting the guy. They had a crazy name for him. It was, during the time of Berkowitz, but this crazy killer, horrible stories I'm not getting into. But I wanted to show you guys these. So when he came back from the Korean War, this is now, I guess, from the mid to late 50s, when he started his job in the NYPD, he'd walk around with these billy clubs. I mean, these are serious. These are serious. Imagine, this is better than my horse femur. I mean, my horse femur is pretty good, but like you can really swing these, and they're a little lighter. But yeah, he'd walk around with these. Crazy stuff. That's all the show and tell I have. And other than that, I thought this would be interesting. I have a bunch of these books. World Topics. I picked 1979. I don't know why. It just looked interesting to me. But it's just funny because we kind of deal with the same thing. There's nothing really new. If you look through these books, it's just the same thing. We just repeat ourselves. It just gets a little worse, I guess, because technology, better and worse. But these are fun because they exist outside of the internet. And it's just interesting to see like how they saw the world, what they thought was important. Because these are like time capsules. So this one, picked up the astronomy thing. I went to the astronomy part of it. And they were dealing with the largest solar flare since 1946, and it disrupted communications worldwide on April 28th. The flare had an intensity of 4, which is known in astronomy as an importance. And you'll see the pictures have gotten really no better of outer space, like this. And there's the fake moon. I think that's the moon they had before Bill Gates replaced it. I like this old picture of a horse and buggy, not from 1979, but they're just showing you how roads have developed over the years. I had a page pulled up and I lost it, so now I was just struggling. That's toast. But I highly recommend collecting stuff like this. It's great. Just see how they talked about humanity at that time before it will be inevitably warped through the lens of modernity on the internet, and how things have changed. I wish I could find this page. This is an interesting picture. That is a salmon catch. The U.S.-Canadian fishing agreement is critical because salmon must be managed by both countries. Salmon spawned off Washington migrate through Canadian waters to Alaska. And this is before the FDA approved genetically modified salmon to be released into the wild. Is my camera just freaking out right now? That's hilarious. It doesn't understand what is going on. But as you guys know, there are a lot of bioengineered, weird mutant salmon in salmon-like farms that have escaped, and there's no telling how many have breeded with real salmon, with these salmon, that with the descendants of those salmon, which is kind of why we cut back on eating salmon, though I love it very much. I think it could be very good for you, but you probably have noticed that the color of salmon has changed over the years. Go look at it, and they add a lot of dye to it. And look at the difference between wild salmon and farm-raised salmon. Here we have a log cabin skyscraper. The only skyscraper log cabin in the world is this 3-story apartment house at White House, capital of Yukon Territory. The impact of the public funds from the multi-billion-dollar natural gas pipeline scheduled for completion in 1983 will be enormous in Whitehorse, where half of the territory's 24,000 people live. The pipeline dollars will provide the first direct and permanent source of revenues of meaningful proportions for any of the local administrations above the 60th parallel. What I was looking for was so funny, though. But basically what it was saying is, in 1979, there was farmland being bought by foreign countries. A lot of farmland. So like we talk about today, China buying farmland and stuff like that. It's nothing new. This has been a slow erasure of American farmland owned by Americans. And now we have a lot of farmland owned by China, BlackRock, Bill Gates, and who am I missing? And data centers, and whoever's behind the data centers. And this one is good too. And this is the parapsychology portion of the book. And that picture right here, Challenger Victor Korchnoi. I'll get it right one day. But he ponders his move as he competes for the world chess crown at, I don't even know why it's in here. I don't even know why I have to mispronounce that name for something that has nothing to do with parapsychology. This book had to embarrass me like that? My goodness. The scope of parapsychology. The term parapsychology, coined by psychologist William McDougall in 1927, was originally intended to refer exclusively to the academic, scientific, experimental approach to what had been more broadly termed psychical research. But today the two terms are used interchangeably. Formally, however, parapsychology has been limited to the study of psi phenomena, which includes ESP, extrasensory perception, such as telepathy, clairvoyance, and precognition, and PK, which is psychokinesis, whereas psychical research includes other such things as out-of-body experiences like astral projection, dowsing, which is water divining, apparitions, poltergeists, psychic healing, and other paranormal phenomena. So dowsing is interesting. You guys know about dowsing, where they would take a stick, like a fork stick with one piece of the stick pointing down, and they would use it to help find water below the surface where they should dig a well. My first time hearing about that was when I was writing a story about this place called Doodletown, which is just south of where I grew up in the Bear Mountain area. It's like a dead town that was purchased by the government with eminent domain. They kicked everyone out, and the people who settled Doodletown, they settled it before like the revolution. So they've been there forever, up until I believe 1950 or 60, somewhere around that time, when the state and the government came in and said, we want to build a ski slope here. They never did, but they kicked everyone out. So everyone left fairly quickly, but the ruins are still there, and there's a lot of old houses up there. You have to, the only way to really get there is to hike. There is one place on top of the mountain where you can drive sort of into the area, but it's always typically locked, gated, because it's all part of the park now. But Doodletown, very interesting. They say Yankee Doodle Dandy was written there. I don't know if that's true. It's one of those folklore stories, but it's also infested with snakes. But I go there a lot and take some pictures, and I decided one day to write about it because there's still a cemetery there, and only descendants from Doodletown can get buried there. So I met with one of the people who lived there for her childhood. She's much older now, and got her whole story. Then through her, got a lot of other sources of people from Doodletown that were still alive that I could talk to. But it was from this lady that I learned about dowsing, and they swore by it. They said that's how they found all the water they needed. So early parapsychology and the Rhine era, emerging from a background of scientific interest in mesmerism and spiritualism, the Society of Psychical Research was founded in London in 1882 and early involved many well-known philosophers, scholars, and scientists, including Henry and Eleanor Sidgwick, Frederick Myers, Edmund Gurney, Lord Arthur Balfour, Sir William Crookes, Sir William Barrett, Lord Rayleigh. I was just waiting to see Aleister Crowley at some point, but he's not there. I'm scanning through. This is just a list of people who do it, but you don't need to exhaust that list. Since 1965, parapsychology has become decentralized in the United States and has also become growingly international. So 1965 is interesting because it was around this time and a little before it where the government and the CIA was using parapsychology, funding parapsychology, experiments like astral projection, mind reading, magic, illusions to help perform and help build out their MK Ultra program. So they knew dang well what they were doing. Well, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I was really hoping I could find that dang article. But the very next thing after parapsychology is the People's Temple. Jim Jones. It was to be a jungle utopia, a tropical paradise where people of all races and religions lived together and worked in harmony and peace. They called it Jonestown. This agricultural commune carved out of the remote jungles of Guyana on the northeastern coast of South America, for it was their leader, Jim Jones, who had the vision of an earthly Eden and led then some 1,000 members of his People's Temple there. There's a lot of different stories, angles, takes on that, and maybe one of these days I'll have someone on to discuss that. I might have just a person to do that, but I'm never going to find this article. That's too bad. That is too bad, but there's satellites from NASA. I wonder which studio they filmed that in. And speaking of yesterday, there's an illustration of Voyager. Or is that real space? Or is that real space? Well, guys, that'll do it for today. I'm sorry I wasn't hanging out last night too much with some family obligations, but it was fun to stop by for a minute and say what's up. Really, really grateful for you guys to be showing up to these strange lo-fi episodes, but they've been fun. I've been really enjoying them, and thank you guys so much for the support. Appreciate the likes, the subscribes. Thank you for the super chats too. I'm sorry if I missed some last night while I took off to do some family stuff, but I did see a few, so I really, really do appreciate that. Trying to keep everything going while everyone's traveling and everything's going on. And like I said, a lot of things are moving around right now. I have no answers yet. It's all above my pay grade. But I hope I know something soon about where we'll be, what everything looks like. I imagine we'll probably know more in the new year, because I know everyone's doing a lot of traveling and figuring out what everything's going to look like moving forward. But I'm stoked to do this in whatever capacity I can, even if it's on my phone and doesn't sound that great. But I'm going to work on getting a little microphone to make it better. Shout out to Alex for sending some ideas, which I'm going to look into that soon and figure that out. But thank you guys. Really appreciate it. And I will see you tomorrow. All right. Have a good night.